Good morning. It is Monday, October 28th, in the eventful and unholy year of 2024. I'm Thomas Caldwell of the Aurelian Column, and this is the Monday Morning Report. Well, I'm going to get to two little stories here, not really little, but and then get on to the big story, which is the United States election, which will be 8 days from today, which has actually been going on for a while, but we'll get to that later. First off, Israel has retaliated against the Iranian attack at the beginning of this month. They finally got around to it. And for those of us who do follow what goes on in that part of the world, and I've been accused of being kind of a little bit cynical and facetious, it's because it always proves to be what it is. And that is, Israel went off and hit some military targets that were not of nuclear or of economic importance. This was somewhat predicted. And, well, it goes on and on. The Israelis have a wonderful term for this sort of thing. It's called mowing the lawn. Every so often, one side hits the other in a way that keeps the fight going but doesn't really end it. And this is done because the last thing that a totalitarian country wants is to get rid of their enemy. And also, the only thing that a totalitarian government or governments worry about more than losing their enemy is losing their income sources. So this is going to go on and on and on. Israel's going to continue to obliterate Gaza. My prediction is that Gaza will eventually be absorbed into Israel, that the West Bank will be made to disappear. There's probably a lot of consideration being made by the upcoming Trump administration. We'll go to that in a minute. It's going to continue so long as people have these religious beliefs that believe what they believe, namely that the other people that worship this rather ancient God somehow have to be destroyed. I don't figure it out. I don't pretend to. But it's a good thing that World War III did not start. The Israelis and now the Iranians are going to go back to mowing the lawn. In other news, a story which I think is significant, and I will almost certainly delve into with a special report later this week on the topic of freedom of speech, is the somewhat controversial commentator, YouTuber, blogger, Candace Owens. Just came in yesterday, has been banned from a trip to Australia, where she was going to have a speaking tour there. The Australian government, which, well, traditionally I've never been a big fan of Australia, but I'll go into that some other time, decided that she was too anti-Semitic, according to them, and her comments would not be welcome. Anyways, she's been banned from the country. She was supposed to go on a speaking tour there, and she's yet, as of this morning, to come out with a public statement on it. Now, I'm not one that follows her very closely. I know she's out there. I don't necessarily agree or disagree with some or all or even a few or nothing that she says. It doesn't matter. We're talking about freedom of speech here. And anyone who is scared of someone's ideas and wants to silence them is inherently a coward. Now, I'm going to do a special report later. I decided after hearing about what happened to Ms. Owens that this needs to be addressed, because back in the days before the internet was really a thing, I was part of a very extraordinary meeting where freedom of speech on what was going to be the internet was discussed, and why we thought it was very important to be maintained. But that's something for another time. Let's go on to the big story, which is the American presidential election. Yesterday, Donald Trump and all of the people who are backing him, real who's who of the MAGA movement, which is now completely crossed all racial, ethnic, religious, even somewhat traditional liberal barriers. I mean, Robert Kennedy Jr., a Kennedy backing a Republican candidate, you do know that hell is frozen over now, don't you? It was quite impressive. I haven't seen the whole thing yet, but to show exactly how disconnected the leftist Marxist side of the political equation in this country has become, it was being compared to another gathering in Madison Square Garden of something called the German-American Bund back in 1939. That was a pro-Nazi, real Nazi organization that was run in the United States. It was banned immediately after Germany declared war on the United States in 1941. But the fact that so-called journalists, and I believe it was Tampon Tim, the vice presidential candidate on the Democratic side, was comparing it to that. This is nuts. It's beyond nuts. But then again, every time we hit one level of nuts, it goes even further into nuts. And this just shows how desperate the Marxist side in the United States has become. Liberalism, traditional liberalism of the kind you saw in the 1960s, folks, that's gone. That's just gone. It's dead. It's finished. And if you're an older person and think of yourself as an old democratic liberal, you need to either do a serious reality check or talk to a mental health professional. Really, it's gone. It's now become this violent, pro-war, anti-constitutional, anti-American movement. These people are enemies of the people of the United States. They're not just people we disagree with. They are enemies. They want nothing to do with everything that this United States of America was built on. They really don't. Now, over the weekend, I got to attend a few events, including a gathering in Virginia where the senior people in Republican political strategy were, and it's been a pretty busy weekend. And let me tell you this, there's no way one side is going to capitulate to the other in this election. I don't see it. A lot of people like to think that's going to happen. Traditionally, that's what would happen. Oh, whoever wins, well, we're going to have to back them the best we can and think of the good of the country. I don't think we're going to see that. And people are concerned, and I think they have reason to be. Because even though it looks to anybody who has open eyes or has been to any of these events that Mr. Trump has put on, I don't see how there's a snowball's chance in hell of Kamala, I don't know, how do we pronounce her name? She's done it a few times differently, but that lady, let's just call her that, who's running for president, who no one ever voted for. She didn't win a single delegate when she ran for president some years ago. But nobody really believes that she would win this election fairly. And in 8 days, I think the fireworks are going to begin. Hopefully not literally, but I don't see how that can be avoided. What we have to keep in mind is that all the division in this country is not going to be repaired the way a lot of us would have hoped. And when you see the Trump rallies, and you've been there, and I don't mean these so-called journalists that are sitting on the media island in the midst of all this with their word processors, their Wi-Fi, and their nice refrigerator full of cool drinks. I was out in the crowd in Butler, as you know, and was talking to people for nearly 12 hours. And it's a cross-section of the United States. These are just people that want their country back. And as I've said, for every one person at a Trump rally, there's probably many thousands that would love to be there but couldn't. And Trump is not the one who is leading this. He's being pushed ahead. This is something a lot of people don't realize, is that a vast number of people in this country want their normal, traditional way of life back. They don't want men in ladies' bathrooms. They do not want men competing in women's sports. They do not want children being convinced at an age when they're not even considered very cognizant to determine their sex and have themselves mutilated. They're sick of history being rewritten. They're sick of an economic system which has pretty much obliterated the middle class. And middle class is what stabilizes a country. The Chinese know that, which is why they've worked so hard for the last few decades building up a middle class. People want their country back. That's why you see people that used to be Democrats, like Tulsi Gabbard or Robert Kennedy Jr., joining the ranks. People who used to consider themselves liberal. Liberal means you want to change things for the better, traditionally. The title liberal and conservative really don't mean anything anymore because nobody wants to keep things the way it is, and nobody wants to change them the way these Marxists that have taken over the Democratic Party want to change things. So here's what we have to look forward to. First off, we don't have an election day. We have an election season now, debatably unconstitutional. It doesn't matter. People have already made up their minds. But when you have an unstoppable force and an immovable object, which you now have in this country, you have a very dangerous situation. The people in power, the Biden crime family, and they are not going to give up power. There's not going to be a transition of power in this country that I believe will be peaceful, because the people in power now have done so many things that are treasonous, and I'm going to have to use that word. They're not going to feel safe. So this is where we're at. There are a lot of people out there that are talking about what to do, but I don't really think we know what's going to happen, and this is the scary thing. Traditionally, you had an election. It was about as personal as a sports event. You'd have families debating the pros and cons of different candidates over the dinner table, but nobody would be divorcing over who was running for president back in the day. That's actually occurred. I know of some cases where that's actually happened. So I wish I had better news for you. I really wish I did. But I would just point something out. It's almost certain that Trump is going to win. There's just too much momentum. There are too many people out there that are supporting him, that have really organized. They aren't going to let 2020 happen again. And there are too many that have gotten involved in poll watching. It's not going, if there's a fair election, it's not going to go towards Kamala Harris, not at all. But their side is not going to capitulate. They are not going to want to see him in office, because that'll mean the end of all of them, politically, financially, and possibly losing their freedom. Do you really think that all those billions of dollars that were sent to Ukraine were used to buy weapons or help the Ukrainian people? If that is investigated thoroughly, it's a virtual certainty that that money got squirreled away all over the place so that it could be at the beck and call of the liberal left-wing establishment here in this country. That was actually something that Ferdinand Marcos did in the Philippines. He squirreled away. He was if you check out his history, he was a real ruthless dictator in the Philippines back in the day. And he, of course, got plenty of quote-unquote foreign aid from the United States and elsewhere. And he put billions and billions and billions of dollars in bank accounts around the world under his name and that of his family. Now, the reason he later claimed that was done when he got into trouble and was overthrown was because he wanted a war chest in case the United States abandoned him. Don't know for sure, but there's only so many billions of dollars that you could spend on yourself, and that's probably what his thought was. This is what countries do. When they're worried about losing power, they squirrel away a lot of money and resources so they can come back and subvert whoever takes over. That could be something we're looking at. It would require a great deal of investigation, which is not impossible. So, while the rest of the world is getting increasingly sick of the United States and its stupidity, because we've had a wonderful republic that has been abused to keep a handful of people wealthy and in control. It's not a good time in our history right now. What can you do? Well, first off, remain abreast of what's going on. And I don't mean following the mainstream media. The mainstream media has completely discredited itself at this point. Completely. You're going to have to pick and choose, and I do plan on putting some various news sources that I would recommend people follow. There's an awful lot of clickbait and disaster porn out there. There are so many people claiming to know what's going to happen, and anybody who says that is rather foolish. There was a young lady who was really a little bit pushy at an event I was at this past weekend, just trying to drill me. What's going to happen? What's going to happen? What's going to happen? I don't know. We'll see how it goes. Don't follow anyone that claims they know what's going to happen, because they're just not telling the truth. What I would recommend people do is what you should always do. Have a good supply of food on hand. Be prepared for some civil unrest, because it's almost a certainty. In fact, I think it is a certainty. The leftist side in this country is going to start initiating violence of some kind. If you've had a Trump sign on your front lawn, or, to be fair, a Harris sign on your front lawn, somebody may have noticed that who is a little bit unhinged. There's a reason traditionally people didn't say who they were voting for in this country, but when you put a sign on your front lawn, well, a lot of people are doing that, and I can understand why, but there's a lot of very messed up people now. Mental illness is a serious problem in the United States. A lot of mentally ill people do have access to weapons. Sad but true. But be prepared to defend yourself and your family if needed. But, as I like to say, do not pray for peace. Pray for sanity, because peace always follows. I'm hoping that everyone is going to sober up real quick at some point. On election night, if it turns into something like 1984, when Mondale lost every single state except the District of Columbia and his home state of Minnesota, that will be interesting. I don't think that's going to happen. But the mainstream media is the one that usually declares the winner. I have a feeling they won't do that. The states are going to start recounting in some places. You are going to see, you're already seeing reports of election fraud here and there, because we've had so many people voting early. I do predict it's going to be a record, because everybody I know that's gone out to vote early, including myself, has just noticed there's a massive number of people that are there, even during the week, during the business day. So it's going to probably be a record turnout for any presidential election in modern history. A good thing, actually. But I guarantee you that the leftist side in this country is not going to sit for Trump winning. And the Trump side is not going to sit for Trump losing, nor will they believe it. And they're the ones that are far more determined than the leftist side. The leftist side is pretty detached from reality, and most of them are, well, let's just say they're not the strongest out there. So I'm going to leave you with this. And this is a lesson for the future. The reason the U.S. has gotten to this point is because people decided to be complacent, because people decided that they had better things to do than participate in government, local, state, and of course, at the federal level. They just gave away the system to people that were willing to show up. The United States system of government, as it was devised and as it was designed, was not designed for a population that had no interest in seeing to their own affairs. The Founding Fathers, they came from a time when the average person had no say in what was going on. So they said, well, they're going to have a say from now on, and they're going to be part of it. I recently got to speak to Dr. Alan Keyes in a video conference, and he pointed something out that a lot of Americans have forgotten, and that is the way it's designed is the people are the government. Let that sink in for a second. The people are the government. The government is us. We are the people that are supposed to govern our own affairs. But for whatever reason, whoever you want to blame, for many decades, we've just decided to only care about it every couple of years and maybe vote if we feel like it or if it's not inconvenient, or show up at town halls if something is really, really going to affect us, like a sewage treatment plant across the street. But by not participating, which was the way it was designed, we have allowed this state of affairs to occur. We're the ones to blame for hundreds of billions of dollars being sent overseas to fight wars that really don't affect us, wars that we could have helped to prevent, or not take care of our own people, to have millions of people living on the street who otherwise could be productive, to allow our healthcare system to decay, to allow crime to go through the ceiling, to not secure our borders, which no sane country in human history would ever go along with, to believe in this ridiculous Marxist concept of political correctness. All of this we have done to ourselves. All of it. We have met the enemy, and he is us. If we pull out of this one, and that is certainly not 100%, but if we pull out of this one, folks, it should be something ingrained in us that's chiseled in stone, both physical and metaphorical, that we will never again neglect our own affairs. Because the alternative is everything that all of our ancestors and the people that founded the United States, at great personal cost to themselves, throughout all these generations, sacrificed for nothing. And I think we owe our ancestors a lot more than we've been living up to lately. That's it for today. If you appreciate these broadcasts and my writings and other activities I've involved in, please like and subscribe. Consider a paid subscription. I also have a fundraiser going for new equipment because video is something I want to be doing, and I also need new... Well, that's the way it goes. You do need new equipment every so often, and that's why there's a fundraiser going. I can be reached at feedback@aureliancolumn.com. That's feedback@aureliancolumn.com. I'm up on X. My handle there is MICCAMPEN. That's MICCAMPEN. You can find me on Telegram. The handle there is, of course, the Aurelian Column. And I'm on a few other locations. I am not on Facebook. In fact, I will never be on Facebook again, and I recommend people consider something besides Facebook these days. An interesting week and beyond lies ahead. Until we meet again, be good, be safe, be vigilant, and remember, Clown World must be destroyed. Good day.